I didn't walk away because I didn't love him. I walked away because loving him meant letting his family destroy me next. I'm 30 years old, he's 31, and I watched his parents almost ruin his life, and then try to drag me into it too. I've known Marlon since college. We studied together, graduated together, and even now we still see each other during lunch breaks because our offices are 5 minutes apart. I work for the federal government. He works at an investment firm. We've always been close, comfortable, familiar, safe. Or at least that's what it felt like before his family became impossible to ignore. Last October, I let Marlon move into my house after his girlfriend Paige broke up with him and kicked him out. She was 29 at the time. Paige is Jewish, openly bisexual, liberal, and a tattoo artist who owns her own studio. Her body is covered in tattoos, her hair jet black, and unlike Marlon, she knows how to stand her ground. She argues when she needs to. She doesn't fold. Marlon comes from a traditional evangelical family in Mississippi. In 2020, during the pandemic, his parents and older brother moved to the Bay Area to be closer to him. What that really meant was that he became their financial lifeline. His mother lives on benefits. His father receives social assistance. His brother Ryan, 35 years old, is unemployed and fully dependent on Marlon and their parents. All three of them live together in a small 2-bedroom apartment, fully supported by Marlon's income. Rent, groceries, internet, shopping, bills, everything. Despite this, they constantly criticize him, belittle him, and treat him like a disappointment, while coddling Ryan like he can do no wrong. During Marlon and Paige's relationship, they had one rule. They wouldn't interfere in each other's family matters unless it directly affected their relationship. Paige warned Marlon multiple times about how toxic his family was and how badly they treated him. But she didn't push further because she respected that agreement. She also avoided his family as much as possible. She hated the way they spoke to her and about her. The one time she did confront them, it exploded. Marlon's mother made snide comments about Paige's tattoos and demanded that she remove the Pride flag, the Ukrainian flag, and the Black Lives Matter banner from her tattoo studio. His parents were also openly hostile about the fact that Paige owned her own home, a house she inherited from her grandfather. They believed it was humiliating for a man if a woman owned property and ran her own business. Marlon later admitted to me that his parents didn't like Paige because of her background, and that they might consider accepting her if she removed her tattoos, converted to their religion, and became a traditional stay-at-home wife. Paige refused. Marlon didn't defend her the way he should have. Instead, he timidly asked her to compromise, to cover her tattoos, take down the flags, keep the peace. Paige told him clearly, if he kept pushing, she would leave. Outside of his family, Marlon was a good man, kind, intelligent, supportive. He helped me through one of the hardest periods of my life during our first year of college. When his family wasn't around, he was confident and whole. But once they moved closer, it was like all the life drained out of him. Paige, our friends, and I all tried to talk to him. We begged him to set boundaries, to distance himself, to stop letting them control him, but he was desperate for their approval. Maybe if I try harder, he kept saying. Maybe they'll change? They didn't. Things escalated when his family demanded even more money. Credit card debt from his mother's shopping addiction, and expenses from traveling across the country to attend political rallies during the last election. When Marlon told them he couldn't give them more, they turned their attention to Paige. They started contacting her directly, demanding money, and claiming that since she was dating their son, she was obligated to contribute. Paige ignored them until they showed up at her tattoo studio. Marlon's mother and his brother Ryan walked in and demanded cash. According to Paige, they believed that if she belonged to Marlon, then everything she owned belonged to him, and therefore to them. His mother screamed about needing money to pay off her debts. When Paige called the police, Ryan jumped over the counter and tried to break into the register. While she was still on the phone with emergency services, Marlon's mother hit her in the face and tried to rip the phone out of her hands. A barber who worked across the street saw the chaos and rushed in with 2 clients. They restrained Ryan while Paige finished the call. His mother screamed slurs at everyone in the room. Both of them were arrested. On Paige pressed charges. Ryan was charged with attempted robbery. His mother was charged with assault. Paige had a split lip and a mild concussion. That was the moment everything broke. After the arrests, Paige told the police she intended to file formal charges and pursue a restraining order against Marlon's family. Ryan had tried to rob her. His mother had assaulted her. There were cameras. There were witnesses. There was nothing ambiguous about it. When Marlon found out, he didn't ask if Paige was okay. Instead, he begged her to drop the charges. He begged her to cancel the restraining order. He begged her to tell the police it was all a misunderstanding. He begged her to fix it because he didn't want to lose his family. According to Paige, that was the moment she knew the relationship was over. She told him she couldn't feel safe with him anymore, not while his family was still in his life, and not when he cared more about protecting them than protecting her. She left him immediately. That's how Marlon ended up moving into my house. At the time, I didn't know all of this. I only knew they had broken up and that he needed somewhere to stay. I had a 4-bedroom family home. My parents bought it in the 90s and moved to Seattle 2 years ago. I cover all the expenses myself, but there was space, and he was my friend. Out of curiosity more than anything, I reached out to Paige to hear her side of the story. She asked to meet in a tea shop. She told me everything Marlon had conveniently left out. She also warned me, very calmly, very seriously, to keep my distance from his family. She said his mother had an unsettling fixation on grandchildren, and that once they decide you're part of the picture, they don't let go. When I got home that day, I confronted Marlon. I demanded that he apologize to Paige, not just for the breakup, but for failing her when she needed him most. I told him to stop trying to get her back, to stop humiliating himself, to stop letting his family destroy everything he touched. To his credit, he did eventually apologize to her, months later. But nothing else changed. He still paid his parents' rent, still paid their debts, still funded his brother's life. 7 months passed. Marlon was still living with me. We were still close, still friends. He paid rent, less than market value, but he paid. Groceries, utilities, his share. On paper, everything was fine. Until one night, while we were sitting in the living room watching Netflix, he turned to me and asked if I would go on a real date with him. Not casually, not joking, a real date. We'd talked about it before, years ago, back in college, back when his family wasn't involved in his life like this, back when he was different, and if I'm being honest, if it had been just him, I might have said yes. So I paused the movie and told him the truth. I told him that when his family isn't around, he's kind, reliable, supportive. That I care about him, that I respect him, that I could see how something between us might work, if it were only about us. Then I asked him the questions he didn't want to answer. If we got together, seriously together, how would he support a future family while financially carrying 3 unemployed adults? If we had children, would his parents expect me to help support them too? Would he ever be able to set boundaries with them when he had failed to do so for years? And I reminded him of Paige. I reminded him what his inability to protect her had cost him. His response was vague, non-committal. He said he would try to find balance. He said he would expect me to help sometimes for the sake of peace. He said his parents wouldn't care that I'm mixed race, as long as I followed their rules when they were around. That was when I realized there was nothing left to discuss. I told him plainly, unless he completely cuts contact with his parents, I will not date him, and neither will anyone else who wants a healthy future. His family will poison every relationship he ever has. Then I got up and went to bed. We never talked about dating again. A few weeks later, Marlon admitted something else. He told me that part of the reason he had even asked me out wasn't just feelings. It was pressure. His parents had started demanding grandchildren, loudly, constantly. His mother, especially, had become obsessed with the idea. That alone made my skin crawl. Around the same time, he confessed that he was still thinking about trying to get Paige back. I shut that down immediately. I told him to leave her alone, that she had made her boundaries painfully clear. That continuing to pursue her wasn't romantic or tragic, it was harassment. I said that unless he got serious help and severed ties with his family, any attempt at a relationship would only end the same way. He nodded, said he understood. He didn't. By this point, I had known him for over a decade, and I was finally seeing the pattern clearly. He wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for a buffer, someone to absorb the emotional fallout from his family, someone to help carry the financial burden, someone who could stand between him and them so he wouldn't have to, and I refused to be that person. We had a written month-to-month rental agreement. He paid rent. If I chose not to renew it, I had to give him 30 days' notice. I hadn't made that decision yet, but I was getting closer. Then everything escalated. In mid-May, I took time off work and went out of town with a man I had recently met online. I'll call him Jack. He's 55. We spent a week in a cabin in the mountains. I barely checked my phone. I didn't bring a charger. I needed distance from everything. While I was gone, someone rang the doorbell at my house. It was Marlon's parents. They stood outside my door, demanding to talk to him. I spoke to them through the video doorbell and told them he was probably at work. I asked what they needed. They immediately launched into complaints, how Marlon wasn't earning enough, how they needed more money, how his mother's legal bills, shopping debt, medical expenses, and gambling issues were piling up. Then his father added that Marlon needed to buy him a new pickup truck, a Denali, because his old one had just been repossessed. And then his mother asked me if Marlon and I were sleeping together. I said no. I said clearly that there was nothing between us. I also told her truthfully that Marlon had said she didn't want him dating me because I was too dark for her. She changed her tone instantly. Suddenly, race didn't matter anymore. She said that given her age and declining health, she just wanted grandchildren, even mixed ones. She said that if Marlon and I slept together and I got pregnant, she wanted to choose the baby's name. I felt physically sick. I reminded her that I was Marlon's friend, and legally, his landlord. Nothing more. Then they left. When I turned my phone back on a few days later, it exploded. Missed calls from Marlon, messages from my friend Tiffany. Jack drove me home. When I walked into my house, I found it partially destroyed. Marlon's bedroom was trashed, furniture overturned, drawers ripped out. The living room was a mess, and Marlon was sitting on the couch, hollow-eyed and shaking. He told me what happened. His parents had come back while I was gone. This time, he let them in. They screamed at him for hours, told him he was failing them, told him he owed them more, told him he needed to step up. Eventually, he agreed to take out a loan to cover their debts. Then, his father took him straight to a dealership. Marlon signed paperwork for the truck. When he got home, the weight of it all finally hit him, and he lost control. That's when I called Tiffany. She came over immediately. The three of us tried to calm him down. We told him again, clearly, that he needed to cut his parents off, that before they moved closer, he had been stable, happy, in a healthy relationship, that now his life was actively collapsing. I told him about the conversation I'd had with his mother through the doorbell, about the pregnancy comment, about how his family was now directly interfering with my life. He apologized, said he'd try to handle it. Tiffany even offered to pay for therapy for him. He refused. Said he just needed to figure something else out, that we were probably misunderstanding his parents. At that point, I knew nothing was getting through. We cleaned up the mess. I went to bed exhausted, and I started seriously planning how to get him out of my house. Later that night, after Marlon went to bed, I sat with Tiffany and Paige. By that point, Paige and I had grown closer. We'd started going to the gym together, talking more, and somewhere along the way we stopped being the ex and the friend, and just became two women comparing notes about the same man and the same family. Paige didn't sugarcoat anything. She said what I had already started to suspect. Marlon wasn't just emotionally trapped by his family, he was conditioned. His parents had spent decades teaching him that love was conditional, but that approval had to be earned through sacrifice, money, obedience, and silence, and every time he tried to pull away, they punished him until he folded. She also said something that stuck with me, that Marlon only seemed to fall apart when the women in his life stopped buffering him from his parents. When she left, everything collapsed. When she stopped calming him down after his mother's calls, he spiraled. And now, without realizing it, he had started leaning on me the same way. That scared me. A few days later, Marlon asked if we could talk. He told me he felt lost, that he didn't know who he was without his family, that he needed support, that he didn't understand why everyone kept telling him to abandon them. I listened. Then I told him something I had been holding back for months, that I wasn't angry at him, but I was done protecting him from reality, that his parents were abusing him financially and emotionally, that his brother was never going to change, that no amount of money, loyalty, or self-destruction would ever earn him the love he was chasing. He stared at the floor the entire time. I also told him something else, that his situation had crossed a line for me, that his parents showing up at my house, making comments about pregnancy, money, and control was unacceptable, that I would not be dragged into his family's dysfunction. He promised, again, that he would handle it. I didn't believe him. A week later, while I was at work, my doorbell camera sent me another notification. His parents were back. This time, Marlon was home. They went inside. When I got back that evening, the atmosphere in the house felt wrong, thick, heavy, like something had already broken. Marlon told me they had screamed at him for hours again, accused him of being selfish, said he was choosing outsiders over blood. His mother cried. His father threatened. His brother demanded more money, and Marlon did what he always did. He folded. He told me he had agreed to keep paying their expenses, the truck, the debts, the legal fees, everything. That was the moment something in me snapped. I told him plainly that this could not continue, that he was destroying his own life and dragging everyone around him down with him, that I could no longer live in a house where his parents had access, influence, or control. I reminded him of the lease. I told him that if things didn't change immediately, I would not be renewing it. He looked shocked, hurt, almost betrayed, as if I were the one doing something wrong. That night, I barely slept. And for the first time since he moved in, I stopped seeing him as my friend who needed help and started seeing him as someone whose presence was no longer safe for my life. A few days after that conversation, I left town for the weekend. I had taken time off work and planned to get away with someone I'd recently met. I needed space, real space, to breathe and think without Marlon, his family, or their constant chaos in my head. While I was gone, I barely checked my phone. When I finally turned it on, I had dozens of missed calls, messages from Marlon, from Tiffany. The tone alone made my stomach drop. I got home that evening. The house looked like it had been hit by a storm. Marlon's bedroom was trashed, drawers pulled out, things smashed. The living room wasn't much better, and Marlon himself was sitting on the couch, hollowed out, staring at nothing. I asked what happened. His parents had come over again. This time he let them in. They berated him for hours, about money, about how he wasn't doing enough, about how ungrateful he was. They told him he needed to step up, take responsibility, prove himself, and he did exactly that. He took out a loan, not for himself, for them. He went with his father to a dealership and signed paperwork for the truck his father wanted, a truck his father couldn't afford, a truck Marlon would be paying for. When he got home, the reality hit him, and instead of confronting them, or himself, he exploded, destroyed his own space, then collapsed. I called Tiffany immediately and asked her to come over. When she arrived, we sat him down, together, so we told him the same thing everyone had been telling him for months. This wasn't love, this wasn't obligation, this was abuse. Tiffany even offered to help pay for therapy, not as charity, but because she genuinely cared and wanted him to have a chance to get out of this cycle. He refused. He said he just needed to try harder, that we didn't understand his parents, that maybe if he could finally give them what they wanted, things would calm down. That was when I told him something I hadn't planned to say out loud, that his family had now crossed into my life, my home, my safety, and that I was done being collateral damage. I told him about the conversation I'd had with his mother through the doorbell camera, about the comments she made about pregnancy, about helping his parents. about choosing names for hypothetical children that did not exist. He went pale. He apologized, promised, again, that he would handle it. But I knew better by then. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone and finally admitted the truth to myself. This wasn't just his problem anymore, and if I didn't draw a hard line, I was going to be pulled under with him. The next morning, I woke up already knowing what I needed to do. I didn't want to do it. I didn't enjoy it. But pretending this situation was temporary had become impossible. Marlon wasn't just struggling. He was sinking and dragging everyone close to him down with him. A few days later, I sat him down and told him clearly that I couldn't keep living like this, that his parents and brother were no longer just his problem. They were showing up at my house. They were demanding money. They were making comments about my body, my future, my hypothetical children. And I told him something that finally seemed to land, that if I ever ended up in danger because of his family, no amount of apologies would undo that. He nodded, said he understood, said he would try, but trying had become his favorite word, and it never led anywhere. 7 months passed, 7 months of the same pattern. He still lived with me. He still paid rent. He still covered his share of expenses. But almost all of his income disappeared straight into his parents' debts. Credit cards, shopping, legal fees, whatever emergency they invented that month. And without Paige in his life, he was unraveling. He was exhausted, depressed, constantly anxious, always waiting for the next call. During that time, Paige and I became friends. We started working out together, talking more, comparing notes. And the more she talked, the more disturbing the picture became. After she filed charges and started the process for a restraining order against his family, Marlon begged her to drop everything, to lie to the police, to say it was a misunderstanding. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't apologize. He just didn't want to lose his family. That was when she walked away for good. Around the same time, Marlon asked me if I'd go on a real date with him, not casually, not jokingly, a real date. I paused the TV and told him the truth, that if it were just him, without his family, I might have said yes. Because when they weren't around, he was kind, thoughtful, and supportive. But his life wasn't just his anymore. I asked him questions he couldn't answer. If we were together, how would he support a household when he was already supporting 3 adults? If we had children, who would come first? Would his parents expect me to help pay their bills too? Would I ever be allowed to say no? He said he'd try to find balance. Then he said something that made my decision final, that his parents wouldn't care about my background or my race as long as I followed their rules. That was it. I told him that unless he completely cut contact with his parents, I would not date him, and neither would anyone else who wanted a healthy future. Then I got up and went to bed.
Thanks for watching. This isn't the end yet. Stay tuned for part 2. Let me know in the comments what you think about this story.